Complex on the screen, healthcare in between. Physics, art, and math got us down this path. Historical tales come alive, where science and stories dive. Blended facts with heart, knowledge from the start. Need bridge blues we sing to the future memory. Health and science in the mix. Maybrick's got the fix. Complex subjects made
right
clear.
now
Every episode
in ways that we actually acquire knowledge
leads the way.
and ways that make me more efficient.
In the world of digital streams, turning knowledge into dreams. Through the tales of old, new stories unfold.
Thank you so much for joining with me. It is truly an honor and a privilege.
MedBix Webcast is a new kind of healthcare media channel to break the silo mentality and foster interdisciplinary thinking. Our mission is to fill that gap and to create a curiosity through different lenses, tapping the passion that guided the historical figures in medicine and bringing present-day groundbreaking research to the front lines. We interview physicians and leaders in the industry about present-day healthcare challenges on our live program.
Hey, welcome to the MedBix Webcast. This is Ramana Raju. I'm the host. You know, I have a very interesting and important guest today, a distinguished guest from Silicon Valley. You know that I need to turn off this. So, very important, distinguished guest today. Is I tell you a story about that. But before that, I want to talk with you something about I found out during the research about my guest. Somebody used to ask me if you wanted to have a dinner with somebody that in your life, one person, name of one person. I say Albert Einstein. Some people say Steve Jobs. So this gentleman not only had a dinner with the Steve Jobs, he lived with Steve Jobs as a roommate. His name is Daniel Kottke. He's going to join in with us. You know, they met in the Reed College. I want to tell you something about Reed College. Very interesting. I used to study nuclear engineering in University of Oklahoma. We had a nuclear reactor, small research reactor. Even Reed College, very strange, a liberal arts college, and they have a nuclear reactor. And they invented something interesting. That's called Cherenkov radiation. I'm going to, let me show you how that radiation is discovered in Reed College. This now Cherenkov radiation is called. What they do is that radiation now they're using the radio, drug delivery systems, radioisotope tracking in the medical field. They found a very amazing applications in this. After all these years, they found a great applications for the Cherenkov radiation that is discovered in the Reed College. I didn't know that. I thought only University of Oklahoma, Norman, Oklahoma. I used to my office. I was a graduate student. My office was right under the nuclear reactor, small research reactor. But so Reed College is very odd, very strange college. I want to show you something about Reed College. Then I will introduce you my guest. Let me show you how many PhDs are there. That is the 120 the Fulbright scholars, 73 Rhodes scholars, fourth largest PhDs from Reed College. Reed College is a mind blowing for me what that college is. It's a liberal arts college. I thought they Steve Jobs and the gentleman that I'm going to introduce you in a second, they went to school together. They studied calligraphy. That's where all these fonts and all those things came in his mind from the Reed College. Reed College is a very fascinating college to me. So Daniel Kottke is a roommate of. He is actually went to school with Daniel Kottke. Went to school with Steve Jobs. They studied in Reed College. That's where they met. I tell you, very interesting concept. And that is a really during that period is very interesting period because they were working in all one form. I come to know about it. It is very interesting. All the people that they did. It is an absolutely fascinating. The Reed College. Let me introduce you, Daniel Kottke, joining. So privileged to invite him. Let me welcome, Daniel. I met you in SRI. You know that is where I met you first time, or in the hotel. I think some kind of a meetup group. I met you in the meetup group, Idea to IPO. After that, I used to see you in SRI. Tell us your journey from your experience at Reed College, Daniel. That is fascinating to me as a science guy.
But Ramana, I can't see you. I have to see
Yeah.
you to talk to you.
Okay, I'm going to come down there.
Can you
Yeah,
add a panel?
yeah. That's hold on.
There we go.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Just let me. Oh no. Just let me do this. Okay.
That's
Go ahead.
that's good.
So tell me about the poster behind you first. Then we can go next one. What is the poster that saying that? There's a very odd looking poster there behind you.
I just found this poster a couple of years ago from the late 70s. It was when Apple was first going global and opening sales offices all over the world. That's what the poster represents.
Oh, amazing. So you got it already. That is in your that is a fascinating. So tell us a little bit about Reed College experience for you. I want to know a little bit more about Reed College. You're born in New York, right? You came all the way. Tell us a little bit of your journey, where you started your life, where were you born, and then
Uh,
you end up in Reed College.
I grew up in Pelham, New York, just outside New York City. Went to boarding school near Princeton for a while. Graduated from the local high school. I was in the nerd category.
Yeah.
When I was at boarding school, it didn't mean much to me at the time, but I won the math prize 2 years in a row for 9th and 10th grade. I thought I would major in math when I got to college, but no, math wasn't interesting enough. Then I found spirituality, and uh, um, that was the most interesting topic of my undergraduate years, I would have to say. And thanks to Steve Jobs for sharing the same interests as me. He and I had our own little book club.
In the so you took classes together, or you were in the same class?
We were not in any one class at the same time, but I'm the one who took calligraphy and really liked it and told him to take it.
Oh, really?
His favorite class was Shakespeare.
Oh my God! Yeah.
And Reed did not. Reed had physics. I took physics at Reed, but I failed to memorize the Greek alphabet. So I was always behind the curve on the variables. I was always getting confused about variables, even though I'm very good at math. Anyway, at Reed, Reed was very pastoral, lots of lawns. There was a college dog who would always greet you walking from classes. And I just met Steve like on the lawn.
So what is his goals for at that time? What is your so you were studying? What is your majoring in? You're majoring in English or
I know I was a math major.
you're a math major? Oh,
But
well,
I switched to music, and the
interesting.
music department was pretty lame, I thought. It was, but I was just interested in many things. But at Reed, if you stay in like literature or philosophy, you have to write a thesis, and I didn't really want to write a big thesis. I ended up graduating from Columbia College.
So after Reed, you moved. You was dropped out, right? Steve Jobs dropped out, and then you moved on to the University of Columbia, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What?
Well, and we went to India, and when we came back,
Let us talk about India a little bit. So you went to Columbia. You finished a master's degree or a master's in what?
no, I left Reed to go to India with Steve.
Oh, India to the Steve. Tell me about that experience.
And
India.
then, yeah, I will. But the next year, I knew I wanted to go back to college. I love college. I love learning. I loved being a student. I thought I would go to Hampshire and Massachusetts, but they couldn't take me until the following semester. So I ended up going to Columbia, where I had a friend, and I shared his dorm room.
Okay. Yeah. Just let me turn on the lights a little bit. We have a light problem.
Anyway,
Okay.
what you were asking about the India trip, perhaps?
India trip. So how did you go to India trip? Where did you end up? You flew down from New York to where? How did you go?
Well, the purpose was the Kumbh Mela. It was the
Oh,
Kumbh
really?
Mela in Hardwar, Rishikesh in 1974. And Robert Friedland, he was the student body president at Reed, and he was a friend of Steve and mine. He was part of the Richard Alpert Be Here Now scene in India. I never heard how he got connected with that, but he was. And so he's the one who told us we should go to the Kumbh Mela.
Really?
And I was a student who didn't have any money per se. But Steve was working for Atari, so he was earning money, not a huge amount of money, but Atari needed to fly Steve to Switzerland to be the guy to figure out the video problem between PAL and NTSC, right? So
Yeah.
this was Switzerland. I don't know. Yeah. And so Steve was already getting all expense paid to Switzerland. So it was his idea to call me and say, let's go to the Kumbh Mela. And I said, okay, but I can't afford the ticket. It was $1,600, I think.
Oh.
He said, I'll lend you the money. So I said, okay. So then we went to the Kumbh Mela, but Steve got there before I did.
Okay.
Maybe 10 days before I got there. I wasn't going to leave my final exams. I was going to finish my final exams.
Okay.
And he met Larry Brilliant of the World Health Organization, who was already working on the smallpox project. And
In India?
In New Delhi.
New Delhi, okay.
Because Robert Friedland was in the circle of Neem Karoli Baba, also known as Maharaji.
Okay.
And so was Larry Brilliant. And so was Ram Dass. And in fact,
Ram Dass was involved. Ram Dass was there too?
Not at the same time.
Okay.
But Ram Dass wrote the book Be Here Now.
Yeah.
And that was the first spiritual book I had ever seen in my life, pretty much. I was a voracious reader, but I was reading science fiction in high school.
Yeah.
And I got Be Here Now, and it kind of blew my mind. And I was carrying it around campus, showing it to people. And of all the people I showed it to, Steve Jobs was one of them. And he thought it was interesting. And so I loaned it to him, and then we started going to Hare Krishna dinners together. That was the beginning of our friendship.
Yeah. So then after that, you were in India, and then you were traveling in the trekking all over in the northern part of India, right? Kumbh Mela. Kumbh Mela is over, or is still there? Area of Kumbh Mela is
the Kumbh Mela is going on right now. You must know that.
Yeah. So actually, Steve Jobs' wife
Lorraine
was there.
Or she was there. I saw photos.
Yeah.
She got a new name, Sri Mata something.
Really? I didn't know
Yes.
that. Do you know her? Have you met her before? Or?
I have met her, and if I email her, sometimes she replies.
Okay, very
and
good.
I found out she's a huge supporter of Kamala, which I found very gratifying.
Yeah. My son is like you. He's similar. My son is a music major. He's a neuroscientist, but he loves music and he produces music, and he wants to find a connection between the music and the neuroscience.
Really?
Yeah. He is
I have those same interests.
Yeah. He's probably I will connect with you. He's a very amazing kid. He went to the Vanderbilt neuroscience. He did in Vanderbilt. He did a neuroscience degree there, and then he did a master.
Vanderwalls, what do you say?
Vanderbilt, New York, Vanderbilt, Nashville.
Vanderbilt.
Yeah, Vanderbilt. Sorry for my accent. So let me ask you, Steve Jobs went to India, you went to India, you came back together. Is there anything that you learned from India? That is, what was the essence of India that you learned during that trip?
There are many answers to that question.
Okay.
Perhaps the top answer would be Steve and I both agreed after our months-long journey that all the interesting gurus had left India and gone to America.
Yeah, that is
kind of true.
yeah.
That at the time we were in India, the number one popular guy was Sai Baba.
Yeah.
And he would sprinkle vibhuti magically out of his
Yeah.
fingers.
Yeah.
And but he was only in the south,
Yeah.
not the north. And of course, Rajneesh was big then,
Yeah.
and Ramana Maharshi and Muktananda, so many. But the other thing was, this wasn't my feeling, but Steve said in it multiple times that after having been on the trip to India, he thought he could do more for humanity by going into technology than by meditating.
Yeah, that's a very interesting conclusion. That is very good. Actually, he saw a lot of suffering probably, and then he wanted to help people there. At the time, India was under, poverty stricken and, reeling under the poverty. I grew up during that time, so I know what that feelings are.
But they're not mutually exclusive, of course.
Yeah.
Meditation is in the category of health and diet.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with technology, particularly.
Let me ask you. So you came back and you were in the Robert. You were mentioning a gentleman, Robert Friedland. What is his name? He's an all-one forum. Let us talk about that cult union or communion someplace in all one forum. Tell us a little bit about that. I didn't know much about it. I was surprised to know about it a little bit.
The story was that Robert Friedland had a rich uncle from Switzerland named Marcel. And Marcel was a successful businessman and a happy guy. And at some point in his life, he just thought, well, I'm wealthy enough and I still have my health. I'm just going to quit from the world of finance and just go travel around. And I never met him in Oregon. But years later, when Apple had started, so we're talking 1978, Marcel came to visit us and he stayed in our house, the house that I was sharing with Steve Jobs. And he had a special gold credit card that he could pay for everything, never worry about money. And we drove him around. And anyway, so Marcel bought this farm for his nephew, Robert. That was the origin of the farm. And it was outside Portland. I forget how many acres, 20 acres maybe. And there was a large apple orchard there. And there was a big barn. And there was a steaming mountain of cow poop that had to be shoveled. And farm, lots of things to be done. And when Steve and I were there in 1975, this is now after our India trip, Robert, we arrived in the late summer. It was maybe August. And Robert said, it's apple harvest time. Why don't you guys be in charge of the apple harvest? And coincidentally, Steve had a book about diet called The Mucusless Diet Healing System. And the companion book was called Rational Fasting. And it was by Arnold Ehret. And it was the book of the fruitarian diet. And Steve was a healthy guy, so was I, but we enjoyed discussing health and where it came from and how to keep it. And so we tried fasting on apples for the 10 days that we were at the All One farm, because when you're harvesting apples, there's a lot of apples that are like half good. There's a worm. If you're making cider, it's okay, but we weren't making cider. We were trying to sell. So there's a lot of half apples. So we were eating all the half apples. Anyway.
There's a saying, 1 apple a day keeps you away from a doctor. That's a saying actually. Yeah.
Yes, but not 8 apples a day. Not good.
Not good.
It's too much sugar. It's too much sugar is not good.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so that's the name Apple. He started it that he got it from the name from the Apple farm, All One farm. He got it from All One farm. Both you were working in the farm. So that is the name he got it for his company when he started it?
Apple could have been named All One Computer.
Really? All One Computer, yeah. So one farm, you started Apple Computer. You're the first employee. He hired you as a part-time employee, right? You're the first part-time employee,
I was
right?
the first part-time employee, 1976, in the garage.
Yeah.
And I did not know.
In the garage, okay.
I was always good with math, but hadn't really learned electronics and did not know anything about digital electronics, but I knew I would learn it. And so I started collecting data books and reading them all the time. And I couldn't figure out how processors worked, but I could fix the boards.
Oh, yeah. So you were testing Apple I, Apple II. You were there in the beginning of the Apple itself, right? What were you testing? The boards is a lot of chips inside, and you put the memory chips inside. I used to put memory chips inside the board.
I probably have a board over on the other side of my room there.
So is there any big difference between Apple I and II, or just a little bit of a?
No, huge difference.
Oh, really?
It's the Apple I was not going to be a successful product. It was really a video keyboard typewriter that had a processor built in, but it couldn't do any graphics, and it was very slow. However, it did run BASIC, and you could write BASIC programs. You could learn to program BASIC on your own computer, on your own desk, which was revolutionary. You couldn't do that with the Altair or the MSI, not easily.
So let me ask you that one of the ideas that you got it from Xerox, Alto's computer, they were talking about Eric Smith. We met together in SRI.
Eric Schmidt.
Eric Schmidt is telling about Steve Jobs got the idea from the Xerox Altos. Is that true, or is that both?
No, and Steve's a smart guy. He already knew about it. He knew a lot. But the purpose of that trip was to bring the whole engineering team.
Okay.
Meaning, well, it was the Lisa group. No, it was more like, Xerox did not want to do that. Oh. They didn't particularly want to, but Apple offered to sell them some stock. I don't know how much, but there was a trade. It was mineral rights. That's what it was. It was mineral rights. Yeah. Anyway, I was not even an engineer. I was a technician, but I heard about this trip and I said, I'm just going to go crash it. So I did.
You were in that trip.
Non-engineer on that trip.
That's amazing. I didn't know that you were there. You were there. You were in the trip with the SRI, same place as what we met, SRI complex?
Yes. And the thing that really amazed me is because I was kind of a hardware person. So I was talking to the hardware guy, and he was showing me the boards in the Alto, and the board that's, like the size of the screen in front of me was the processor. Oh. There was no microprocessor on it. It was a bit slice machine that was 4-bit chunks for a 32-bit word, I think. And it was just a big board filled with chips, and it just blew my mind.
So they have the mouse. They at the time, did you see the mouse operation? They started a mouse, right? The mouse that we all use.
The mouse.
Yeah.
Yes, the mouse was invented at SRI,
Yes, sir.
but it was first used, practically speaking, on the Alto. Alto was the first mouse Windows interface machine.
So tell me about the evolution from Apple II to Macintosh. I used to go to the computer stores because I cannot afford computers at the time, particularly Apple. So we used to stand in line to watch the Macintosh computer. When there was a lot of calligraphy, a lot of different fonts, very fascinating to us at the time. Tell us a little bit the journey of the Macintosh computers.
How many hours would you like to spend
Just
hearing?
brief.
I'll summarize in a minute for you.
Okay.
So the Apple II was a huge success because it was color graphics and it was programmable and it was fun and friendly. And then once we got the floppy disk drive and once it had VisiCalc, it was rocking.
Grokking, yeah.
Right. But you could still not people didn't do word processing because you had to add an 80 column card.
Mm.
So that was one of the time. So actually, when I was the person who built the prototypes of the Apple III. I was not a designer yet, but I built all the prototypes. And the Apple III was a word processing machine and it had high-res graphics, but it wasn't a graphical user interface. So after that trip to Xerox PARC to see the Alto, everyone in the engineering group knew that that was the future.
Mm.
And so that was the beginning of the Lisa project, okay? Named after who? Steve's daughter, Lisa. And Steve was the head of that new project.
Yeah.
And it was new and exciting. So Apple hired 2 dozen older engineers from SRI and Hewlett Packard, like older professional engineers to design the Lisa, because this was a whole nother level up from the Apple II, right? And being older and more professional, Steve Jobs didn't really connect with them in the way he should have tried to.
Mm.
He talked down to them, right? And after a year of that, roughly speaking, the head of the Lisa group went to the president of Apple and said, would you get this guy, Steve Jobs, out of our hair? Tell him he can't come to our engineering meetings. Right?
Yeah.
And Steve insulted them too many times. And so after, going home to sulk for a few weeks, Steve decided, well, screw that. I'm going to start my own computer division. And it happened that Jeff Raskin had already created this Macintosh project,
Mm-hmm.
but it was unfunded. And they had a tiny prototype, little tiny prototype with an underpowered CPU, but it was a graphical user interface meant to go into $1,000 computer that would be your little friendly computer.
Yes.
That was the Macintosh. But Jeff Raskin did not have a budget to staff it up. And so that was actually a very fortunate thing. So Steve Jobs just took it over and said, and that was, now we're talking January of 81. Apple went public in November of 80. And all of a sudden, Steve Jobs is worth 100 million and Apple's worth billions. And so there was money to be spent. And so Steve, I was the 5th or 6th engineer hired on the Mac project, the same day as Andy Hertzfeld. And we started building more. Burl Smith was the brilliant he was the number 1 hardware designer. I was the number 2 designer. And Burl did a super job designing the tiny circuit for the logic board.
How much the calligraphy or the fonts from Reed College, kind of a innovation wise, it helped you guys to build that Macintosh computer?
Well, I would say that calligraphy was a new thing. I had never heard of calligraphy before I was at Reed.
Yeah.
And Steve liked that course. And it was a happy coincidence that right around that time, John Warnock at Adobe, Chuck Geschke and John Warnock, I think they got like a Nobel Prize for that, for creating PostScript, which enabled fonts.
Mm-hmm.
That is what enabled digital fonts.
Yeah.
And that was a new thing. And Apple quickly negotiated a license with them to have fonts.
I heard that Daniel, your name is inside the Apple computer somewhere. Is that right? Your board or something? Your name is that?
The top, I don't know how many names. Maybe there's 40 or 50 names. Of the size of the engineering group at the time, we all signed a giant piece of poster board. And they took the artwork from that poster board and etched it into the mold. So it's in the plastic of the inside of the case. That was a really, I don't know, Steve Jobs may not have thought of that himself, but it was a great idea.
That's a great, excellent
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
So after that, you left you left Apple. It's a contentious kind of you and Steve Jobs, even though you're roommates, you stayed with his girlfriend. His girlfriend was your roommate, right? Christine Brennan.
Yes. Yeah. She was my housemate. How did you know that? You read the book.
I saw in the Wikipedia.
Actually, well, she was in the house with Steve and I before Apple, right at the time Apple started.
Okay. Isn't Cupertino right here?
And the three of us spent a lot of time together.
Yeah.
But really, Steve was already super busy.
Mm.
And he didn't really want to have a girlfriend. He was building his little startup company.
Yeah. Are you in touch with her, or is she alive? Or is she,
oh, yeah, she's well.
She's okay.
She is living back in Palo Alto, and I see her around once in a while.
Oh, very good. Oh, you're a history.
Lisa lives in Brooklyn, and she has a happy life, and she wrote a great book that's a memoir called
something. Are you in touch with her still? Are you in touch with all these people?
Yeah. Well, I'm a contact. I stay in touch with everyone I ever knew.
Yeah, that's good. Daniel, one of the things you left some kind of with a difference with the Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs is a well-known, is not easy guy to get along. That's people say that. How far is true? How far is not true? Tell us a little bit about that.
Steve's a complicated person. What can I say?
Yeah.
I had no problem with him at all traveling around India for 4 months.
Yeah.
We got along great. He was a little obsessed with not paying too much for things. But it wasn't like annoying or alarming. It's like, come on, Steve, we're talking pennies.
Okay.
And all my traveler's checks were stolen.
Oh, really?
At the very end, we were in Manali, up in the north of India. And then the bank would not give me a refund. So I was completely broke. Steve paid for we were sharing the hotel rooms. He stayed for another week and then he left. And I did eventually, but he gave me his last money before he went back.
Oh, well, he did something.
Steve's personality changed the moment he started Apple. Yeah. Because he had a kind of missionary zeal about changing the world with computers in a completely good way. Mm. He knew he was onto something super exciting and potentially world changing. But certainly by the time Apple went public, 1980, when you go from 10 million to $100 million net worth when you're 24 years old,
yeah,
it's hard to handle.
How to handle that.
I'm sympathetic.
Yeah, let me ask you, what about the Bill Gates? He used to come down there. He used to come to the Apple offices. And what kind of relationship you have with the Bill Gates?
Well, between Bill and Steve, they were cordial enough, but they were also enemies.
Yeah,
And I met Bill Gates once at a conference. Super nice guy.
yeah,
He just hung out in the lobby chatting with us.
yeah,
But that was before he was a billionaire.
yeah.
Uh, well, I don't know. I always liked Bill, but
Yeah.
but the whole world liked to revile Microsoft for a while there as the dark force.
Yeah, that's a Apple computers kind of a
I think actually I think we can all be proud of Bill in the sense that his wife Melinda gets a lot of credit for humanizing him from being
yes,
so much of a nerd into being a philanthropist. He
very
really
true.
rose to the occasion. And
Absolutely.
unfortunately, I don't think he really made progress converting Steve Jobs into a philanthropist. I know he tried.
Yeah.
Anyway, Lorene is stepping up. She's stepping up.
Lauren is stepping up, and I'm impressed. She's
Yeah.
trying to do a lot of good things. Yeah, I mean that is a
Mackenzie,
fascinating.
what's her
Yeah,
name? Bezos's wife.
yeah. Then there is a Steve Wozniak. Steve Wozniak is your friend, both your friend, Steve Jobs' friend, both a mutual friend for all of you. How is your relationship with him? With all three together, how did you survive?
What do you mean survive?
So, I mean, you left Apple, right? And you left Apple. Steve Wozniak, he did not give you any shares. That's what we know. And then Steve Wozniak started giving. He donated some of the stock in the Apple to you. You just tell us that story. What I fascinated me about you, Danielle. You never came across to me as an angry man. You didn't get any stocks from Steve Jobs, but he never. He told me the answer for that is only one thing. What is that answer he gave me? That's why you're not angry. I said that upset meditation.
Well, well, meditation in general, but
Yeah,
actually, um, uh, I had never really. It's not like I was holding animosity for Steve, but it was a depressing time in my life when Apple was going public and I didn't have any part of it. And everyone I worked with became a millionaire.
yeah,
That was tough,
that is tough. Yeah,
which is why years later, Steve Wozniak gave modest uh, bundles of stock to 6 of us. I wasn't the only one.
okay.
But it was less than 2 years' salary. It was a year's salary, maybe. No, it was more than a year's salary, but not like a giant windfall.
Jane Windfall. Yeah.
What
Are
I
you in
ended up,
touch? Are you in touch with him still, or do you talk with him once in a while,
oh,
or
sure.
no?
He's just a very busy guy. I
He
don't
will
see
be.
him that often.
He's still active. He's still active, giving
He
the.
is out there all the time, and he's on YouTube all the time now, giving interviews, talking about what's happening to our country.
So now you start a parrot health. The parrot health is how did you get into the health? Let me say this one. You told me one thing is interesting. In Apple, when you came back from India, you built a channel of EKG monitoring. What is that called? The heart monitoring channel that you built it. Can you tell us a little bit about that? You were talking about the some kind of a module that you built in Apple.
Yes, well, Walter Greenleaf was a very good friend of mine in the early 80s during the years I was at Apple still. And he got his medical degree from Stanford the same year I left Apple.
Oh, really?
And so he started a company called Greenleaf Science.
Mhm.
And the first product was he had done, because of his dissertation, I think he was an MD, PhD.
Oh, really?
He was doing sleep research.
Mhm.
Sleep research involves a polygraph
Mm.
with respiration, EKG, EEG channels. And the Apple II was an exciting new thing. And so I designed for him a board that would take 8 channels of input and put all the digitized samples in a shared memory. And then the processor in the Apple II could read the values one whole table at a time. So it was very efficient. And that was the product. What was it called? I can't even remember the name of the product, but I still have the board I designed. And
Oh, really
anyway,
amazing.
that company turned into a company called Sleep Trace. Oh, I don't remember the product name, but the company changed names and became Sleep Trace and was sold for years for
Really?
sleep research labs. And then I got hooked up with Stephen LaBerge, who was the founder of Lucidity Research. So that was all about lucid dreaming.
Yeah.
And I designed for him a mask that had infrared LEDs that would look at your eye movements. And so while you were sleeping, once you started dreaming with the eye movements, it would flash a red light as a stimulus, where if you were
Interesting.
trying to practice lucid dreaming, you could get into that state. And lucid
No,
dreaming is like a superpower state, because it's like your brain's creating a reality, but you are partially conscious. So it's kind of a superpower.
superpower, yeah.
Yeah.
So you say it's interesting that you didn't have any medical background, you didn't have engineering itself by itself, but you did a lot of work in engineering, in the medical. Now that's kind of a revolution during the time. The computers are doing some kind of a medical monitoring. I used to sell EKG cards in the computers. I used to install XT computers. I used to install EKGs. That is a fascinating to me at the time. That the EKG used to look like a refrigerator size, huge refrigerator size. So that is changed completely with the EKG on the card. The
Yes.
controller card I used to plug in. So he did that. That is a fascinating times. That's a really good revolution. With your background, he did that. Is a really hats off to you. Now you got into healthcare.
Let me just comment. I was talking with Evian Gordon 2 days ago. He's at UCSF. He has various startups, but what he is promoting currently is continuously monitoring your heart rate variability, which tells you many things about your health, because your heart is normally supposed to speed up and slow down.
Yeah.
And when you start to get different types of heart problems,
Yeah.
it doesn't speed up and slow down the way it. And the other thing is, so I was a consulting engineer on the EM Wave product from HeartMath, which
Oh yeah, I know hot math. Yeah.
yes. And what we were doing in that product is we were doing continuous Fourier transform of your heart rate signal. And you can take a computer, and there's a version for the PC. If you look at a photo of Gaza, you can detect that immediately in your heartbeat, because it's a jitter. Anything that you don't like, something that affects you, it'll
Really?
cause jitter in your heart rate.
Huh.
And similarly, if you're trying to have a meditative experience, your heart rate should slowly rise and fall with your breathing, which is actually, I learned Vipassana meditation, and it's kind of all about your breathing. There's many types of meditation that are addressed at breathing, right? Prana. It's all
Yeah.
about the prana.
Yeah, probably.
You're breathing in the universe.
Yeah, I did know that hot math. So that's why it is a natural progression for you. You started, and now you are Chief Technology Officer for Parrot Health. Tell us a little bit about Parrot Health, a little bit.
Parrot Health is the vision and the inspiration of Jay Elliott, who was a senior vice president at Apple and in the 80s. And Jay is a longtime veterans rights activist. And so he came up with this product that first started 2 years ago. And it was an app where if you're a veteran who's having a hard time with your life, or financial or medical or homeless or drug dependency or PTSD or suicide, You can just pull out this app and call a service that will talk to you. Kind of like 988 is now for suicide. And anyway, that app just finally made it onto the App Store after he worked on it for a year. I don't know. He had a hard time, and he's still looking for funding. But what I am going to help him with is bring a voice user interface and bring AI into the app, because the main purpose is that the mental health workers have to fill out insurance forms so that the money will flow. And filling out insurance forms involves some diagnosis,
Yeah.
right? And so the app really can collect diagnosis of the mental health scheme and get enough information to keep the money flowing. And also the app for the client, it helps with getting resources. So people, I found out recently that in California, only 12% of the homeless are vets. I thought it was more like 50%.
Oh, man, that's a large number.
But,
It's still 12%.
but the other statistic is that way more, at least 50% of vets have problems in their lives, either financial or medical, mental, PTSD, very, very common.
Yeah. Now, let us talk about that drug dependency a little bit about that. I wanted to show you something, but I'm a science guy. I'm going to present a small topic about that. I want to ask you about Steve Jobs is talking about, in one of the interviews, he said that Bill Gates should have taken some psychedelic drug.
Yeah.
He would have been he would have thought different way. So,
you know what? I just read Bill Gates did take LSD.
Okay. So let me show you a little bit about a topic. You go and me and watch, and when I come back, we'll ask you Parrot help a little bit, and then your journey to the final. Let me show you this. Both we watch together. You can comment on this. My just a 5-minute video that I make. Just let me show you.
For mental relaxation, early human civilizations in the East practiced Buddha's teachings, while in the West they performed rituals. One place they mastered the consciousness through meditation, and other place they altered consciousness through psychedelics. But there is another alternative technique called consciousness hacking through technological innovation. A mathematical equation through virtual reality can offer and alter and master consciousness at the same time. A genius painter from Japan, a legendary scientist from Princeton University, and an engineer from IBM came from a different walks of life, from different times, made important contributions for consciousness hacking. Benoit Mandelbrot was hired by IBM to solve a nagging problem in the early days of telecommunications. The problem is a noise popping up while sending the data across telephone lines. Noise is an undesirable or unwanted signal that gets randomly added to the actual information carrying signal. Mandelbrot noticed a fixed pattern of noise repeating across the telephone lines irrespective of the distance the data traveled. Mandelbrot recollected seeing a similar idea before, a picture of a giant wave on a children's spiral notebook. The picture is the original painting from 18th century well-known Japanese artist Katsushika Hokusai. It is called the Great Wave of Kanagawa. Look at any part of the Great Wave, it looks very similar to the whole wave. The whole contains the parts. It looks counterintuitive, but the part also contains the whole. The artistic expression gave rise to a new concept in mathematics called fractals. Mandelbrot discovered nature's fundamental unit repeated through a geometrical pattern. The same geometrical pattern is present everywhere in the clouds, seashores, trees, and even in the human bodies. The nervous system looks very similar to that of a lightning. The EKG of the heart signal is strikingly similar to that of a noise signal in telephone wires. If you further zoom in into the signal, the strange looking pattern emerges. The pattern is discovered by Mandelbrot, bears his name Mandelbrot set. The nature around you, the snowflakes, trees, mountains are built from these series of Mandelbrot sets. We can also observe Mandelbrot sets at the beginning of life in a woman's womb. The equation that governs the nature is spectacularly simple and displays the nature in exquisite details. Before the public understood the power of the Mandelbrot sets, Hollywood jumped in. The Star Trek movies with the fractals put the movie watchers in a trance. There is a similar, a different kind of a trance was described by an American botanist, a former New Age hippie, Terence McKenna. He frequently experimented with a psychedelic brew called ayahuasca. He chronicled his experiences through books and videos. Amazonian Indians consumed this brew on ceremonial occasions. Terence McKenna claims this brew produced visual and auditory hallucinations while his eyes were closed. He claimed his experiences profoundly changed his outlook on life.
Many of them, and they come pounding toward you, and they will stop in front of you and vibrate, but then they do a very disconcerting thing, which is they jump into your body. They jump into your body, and then they jump back out again. And the whole thing is going on in this very high-speed mode, where you're being presented with thousands of details per second, and you can't get a hold on, you say, my God, what's happening?
In recent studies by Johns Hopkins and New York University Langone Special Unit Psychedelic Medicine Center conducted studies with the psychedelic drug psilocybin in a controlled environment. The chemical compound in psilocybin is dimethyltryptamine, in short called a DMT. The studies show a single dose of psilocybin dramatically reduced the depression with the subjects of research. Interestingly, the visual hallucinations the subjects describing look very similar to Mandelbrot fractals. In the years before, Albert Einstein published a theory of general relativity, a profoundly mind-bending way of looking at nature. Mass tells space-time how to curve, and space-time tells mass how to move. Gravity is not a force, it is an illusion created by the bodies moving in space-time curvature. Einstein deployed a very different branch of mathematics called non-Euclidean geometry. We don't experience non-Euclidean geometry in our everyday lives. American Airlines pilot explained this phenomena through a tricky example. The shortest route from Dallas to Hong Kong is first Dallas to Seattle, then Seattle to Alaska, then Alaska to Siberia, then Siberia to Mongolia, then Mongolia to Hong Kong. That is the shortest route. But you see on a flat map, it creates an illusion the Hong Kong is directly right across Dallas. But if you combine Einstein's non-Euclidean geometrical concepts with the Mandelbrot fractals, watching in a virtual reality devices, it is truly a technical wonder. It produces mind-feasting, kaleidoscoping patterns where all your visual channels are fully occupied. It puts you in a trance and gives you same bliss without inducing substances. the fractals
So,
for nature's artistic expressions. Now you are in tune with the nature. Welcome to 25 milligram DMT experience without a DMT. Consciousness hacking through technology is a mass mental relaxation technique for modern humans. Thank you for watching.
All right.
yeah.
It's the brain.
So, what do you think?
Are you franchising that?
I wanted to franchise it. I needed help.
Uh,
So you can help. You know a lot of people. Yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to put in the in the doctor's offices. I want to put in the malls. I want to put in the very co-working spaces. That would be better. I wanted to do that. So it's actually the point I'm making in that video is actually I paid it's not a free plan, but I paid it. But actually, what the plan is that you can replace the LSD experience with the audio visual stimulations you can create in the mind. The mind you can hack that process, and you can deceive the mind doing like you have a LSD experience with the technology. That is the goal of that whole process. So that's particularly if you do Fourier transformation you're talking about. Fourier transformation is a real wonder, as you know, Danielle. So it is a Fourier transformation actually does that. The non-Euclidean geometry. If you take the 3D geometry, fractal geometry of non-Euclidean, really blows your mind. Your brain is computing so fast, and your visual channels are occupied, and so you will be different then. So I wanted to ask you: did you meet Terence McKenna by chance? That Terence McKenna, the guy.
No, I was a big fan of Terence McKenna, and 1985, I took an all-day workshop with him.
Really? You met him then?
Up in Berkeley.
Oh, interesting. Oh, interesting. Oh, yeah. He died very strange ways, right? It's
a brain cancer.
Brain cancer, yeah.
And he said, his funny quote was, "Well, I guess we've proved that smoking pot doesn't cure brain cancer." He was a big pothead.
Yeah. So Daniel, you're a living legend in my view. You're a symbol of Silicon Valley technology of the center. It is so privileged that you're still telling the story, and then you are consultant for a lot of movies. Ashton Kutcher, all those movies he did for with the controversies, of course. So when I met you, you never came across as a controversial person. He's a very, very gentleman you are. So tell us.
Thank you, Ramana.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and also you gave me a great compliment, and you sent me. You enjoyed my presentations, so thank you so much.
Are you
Ramana Maharshi?
named
Yeah.
after this guy? Were your parents devotees?
Yes, my parents are very Hindu devotees.
Ramana didn't travel, and he was in southern India, Tiruvannamalai.
Yeah. Yeah, he stayed in the southern India. He never moved out any place.
Even I never heard of him.
Yeah.
I didn't hear about him until years later, but there was a Ramana ashram in Santa Cruz.
Oh, really? I didn't know
that. Guru Nomi.
We should go together one day. We'll make a trip there.
I think there's still. Yes, I have a friend who goes once in a while.
Oh,
and that was Steve and I didn't know about Advaita Vedanta. Although we had many books that we were reading, but
how much inspiration he had, Steve Jobs, and you certainly have inspiration from Indian philosophy. He was reading one of the book is Autobiography of Yogi. He was reading at the last stages of his life. Tell us a little bit about that. And what is his last time he called you? So you tell me that you were called with Steve Jobs, before.
Well, about the book. So the first book was Be Here Now. And I went around asking many people, what should I read next? This is fascinating. And I was referred to Autobiography of a Yogi. Yeah. And Steve and I both liked it. It's got lots of stories. It's a great kind of beginner's introduction to spirituality book. It's very motivational. And that set us off on a long reading list. I think the third book was Ramakrishna and his devotees.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was The Way of the White Clouds by Lama Govinda. And then there were all the Alan Watts books. There were so many of them. And then there was Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism, Chogyam Trungpa. And then there was the Zen Buddhist stuff. And wait, I'm losing my.
The autobiography of Yogi was influential on you. That he was reading the last stages of his life.
No. What I was going to say was, I think in retrospect, autobiography of a yogi is kind of like a rosy lens introduction to spirituality.
Correct.
And I think that the miracle stories kind of really get you thinking, but the miracle stories are not really of much importance. They just kind of get your attention.
Yeah.
In the same way that Sai Baba, he was famous for doing all his miracle stuff.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, Neem Karoli Baba had none of that.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know
It was
that.
just all huge heart and clairvoyance.
Mm.
And back to your question about the takeaway from our trip to India. By the time we got back, it was like, okay, well, we put in a few months. We didn't find anything magical and mystical, but now let's go back to life. Right? But all these decades later, like many decades later, I'm now trying to like write my memoir. And before I start writing, I wanted to kind of have the whole picture in my mind. And because the picture is about two young men in search of enlightenment in India, I had to know how I'm going to end this. And now that it's 40 years later, I have to say what I think my definition of enlightenment is. And I thought, oh my gosh, I better ponder this for a while. So I've been pondering it for a few years, and I have some good answers now. But back to Neem Karoli Baba, Larry Brilliant just came out with a great autobiography called Sometimes Brilliant. He talks about, he had a medical degree. He was a medical doctor. It was his girlfriend who was the devotee. And it was his girlfriend who pulled him into the Neem Karoli orbit.
Okay.
And Neem Karoli ignored Larry. And he didn't have a connection for weeks or months. And he was very skeptical. And he thought, well, I'm going back to America. I'm going back to work in a hospital. Right. Yeah. And the very day he was trying to leave, he went in one last time to the ashram to say goodbye. And he pranamed for Neem Karoli. And Neem Karoli planted his foot on Larry's hand so that he couldn't leave. It's a great story. Yeah. And he said he went into an altered state. And white light. And what am I doing here? Who am I anyway? And he ended up becoming a devotee himself. That's all it took. So to get to the point, I think of all of the spiritual disciplines that I read and all the gurus that we visited or read or heard about, Neem Karoli still comes out really, really high on the list because he wasn't in the guru business. He didn't have a particular thing that he was doing. He's just who he was. And he was asking for money, but it wasn't for himself. He was asking for money to feed people. Yeah. So that was his spiritual practice. But the thing that he did so consistently was he was very clairvoyant. And when there are many, many stories of people walking up to greet him, whether as strangers or devotees, he would say the thing that was in your head. The question you wanted to ask, he would magically know it. And he would say something and you'd think, how could he possibly know that? He can read my mind. And so that has been the enduring topic of interest. And I have since, when I had my own talk show, I did 3 long shows with Russell Targ, who's the world expert on remote viewing.
I met him actually. Yes. Yeah.
And you know what? I'll refer him to you. You can interview him. He
Yes.
lives down the street.
Yeah. Really.
He
Yeah.
doesn't get out that much, but anyway, remote viewing is scientifically proven
Yeah.
without any doubt.
Yeah. I attended one of his lectures.
CIA paid him
To do that.
a
Yeah.
dozen years to do these experiments.
Yeah.
And remote viewing is next door to clairvoyance.
Yeah.
Clairvoyance is images. That's what remote viewing is.
Yeah.
Clairvoyance is more like thoughts or feelings, I guess you would say. But my conclusion about all of this is that it's great if you can be a healer. Neem Karoli wasn't so much a healer, but if you had a big problem in your life, he would like magically appear for you.
Mm.
So you felt you were being cared for. Like he had that
Amazing
ability. But the feeling of being in the presence of another human being who knows what you're thinking is a very healing thing in itself.
Absolutely.
The feeling that your thoughts are not private. Okay. And in as much as it's clairvoyance, you could say, okay, well, Russell Targ tells us that anyone can do remote viewing if you focus on it. And I think, so that's what I've been thinking a lot about in recent years, is bridging between remote viewing, which is experimentally verified, and clairvoyance, and kind of bridging that so that more people, so that the sociopaths who are walking around on our planet don't think they have secret evil plans in their heads, right?
Absolutely.
I'm always thinking all these great gurus that we've had in our cultural history of India, particularly, like what could Neem Karoli do in the presence of Putin? I don't know. It would never happen.
You're visiting back 40 years back of that. You're in the context of 40 years. You're looking back and going back to the origins is fascinating to me. I wanted to ask you when Steve Jobs, before dying, and he was a pancreatic cancer and serious problem, and then did he call you or any communication happened between you and him?
Oh, well, you asked earlier, and he called me once in 2009, and I had the presence of mind to say, Steve, you have had a very interesting life.
Yeah.
And at the time, there was no hint that he would not have a long life. He might have suspected. He probably did suspect.
Okay. Yeah.
But I said, Steve, what do you think now about reincarnation?
What did he say?
He goes, 50-50.
Yeah, that's what he said, 50-50. Yeah.
Which is, I'm more than 50-50. I'm at least 60-40.
Yeah.
I think my own life is so bizarre. I don't know how to explain it except through some kind of past lives. I just can't explain it.
You know, what you think about your father and mother both died, and then you have your own revelation. So, in the context of the spirituality and your mental health project, what do you think of life in general? What we contribute? What humans should contribute to the world? You're the witness to a great revolution in this country. As Steve Jobs said, that technology can solve a lot of problems, humanity's problems. It did solve those problems. A lot of like supply chain mechanisms, most of the internet, all those things are solved through technology, and no question. You and me, we are talking because of technology. So that vision is definitely helped. Both of you had that vision and carried to all of us. What do you think of life in general? We need to contribute now. Everything is a lot of people think about gathering money, and that's one way or other way. Is anything changing in the present days? Is it better or is it worse? What do you think?
Oh, I think everything is changing. It's a time of huge change, seemingly mostly bad.
Yeah.
But there's lots of good things too.
Yeah.
The thought that came up just now for you is that I think it might have been Steve who first, in my hearing, said all of our technology is just increasing forms of communication, which I thought was a big oversimplification. But if you think about telephone, telegraph, radio, certainly smartphones, texting, it's all communication, internet communication. And I think that we as humans, if we can just stop doing damage, just like tone it down a little bit, that's the good life. Like if you just like not increase the damage, just try and improve it a little bit.
Daniel.
Let me finish this thought. So technology can now bring us a channel to talk to plants and animals.
Yes.
There's all kinds of stuff going on about that.
Absolutely.
Do you know Khan Slobodnikov, Universal Language of Animals? I'll refer you to him. You can interview him.
No, I love that.
He's in the Midwest. Anyway, I like that whole theme. And I guess you could say, well, AI is more than language. But one of the great things about AI is it is superb at translating anything into anything else. That's what transformers do. Yeah. So we are in a giant revolution of everything being able to talk to everything.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
But the center of that should be empathy, right? Compassion and empathy.
Yes,
has to be the center of the whole process.
Which is that's not communication. Empathy is a sense that takes time to mature in human beings. And what we know now is that feelings and some sense of self is everywhere in life. Even amoebas show little bits of consciousness.
Yeah.
And empathy naturally develops, except when it doesn't. And what happens if empathy doesn't develop at a young age, like if you are traumatized in any number of ways as a child, your empathy will not develop and you will become a sociopath or a psychopath, right? Or a narcissist.
I sometimes I think about, can we create a mathematical function, empathy function, that rewards are connected to the empathy function rather than anything else? We are 9 to 5, come down and give you a paycheck, rather than empathy and how much you are helping other people. The reward system has to be translated in a mathematical way into empathy function. What do you think of that kind of a future of the
I think we could start a company right now dedicated to make a personal AI that just teaches empathy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Empathy is a conversational thing. Yeah. And it can be taught.
Yeah. And then not only that, any function in the future of the economics, you studied economics. Economics itself should be connected to the empathy and compassion, has to be tied together as a function of that. Then rewards should be follow that, rather than you come to 9 to 5, you invent something. How do you create a platform, a pyramid platform, and suck the money out to the top? That is the game now. Instead of that game, we need empathy has to be the center of that, and the reward system is based on the empathetic qualities, and then a function of empathy that you can create a mathematical function. That's what I think sometimes. Daniel, it is a privilege and honor to talk with you. I truly enjoyed. Whenever I meet you, I always have a wonderful. I'm blessed to meet you. It is a really in person. He gave me a great compliment for my podcast. Thank you so much. I'm honored to have you. That compliment from you particularly. So it is a truly an honor. You're a legend. In your own right. you're trying to find that humans' final goal of humanity, that through empathy, and that's why I started the Empathetic AI, Parrot Health, and we'll be advancing. And like to see you soon in SRI complex again. Thank you so much. You want to say any final words, Danielle?
Empathy. You said Empathy AI.
The Empathy AI.
Do you already have that domain name?
Empathy AI, your very name, yes.
Oh, that's a good name.
Yeah.
When I think of empathy, I think of Mike Doty. Do you know him at Stanford?
Yeah, no.
He's a surgeon, but he's the founder of the CCARE Center for Compassion and Empathy Research at Stanford. And he has written a couple of books called Into the Magic Shop. But he's all about empathy and compassion. And the other guy who's so good is Dr. Keltner in Berkeley. He's written a couple of books. Do you know Dr. Keltner?
No, I don't know too many. I'm from Georgia. Most of the life I lived in India, and then after that, after my degree,
anyway,
I moved to Atlanta, Georgia.
Dr. Keltner, I've never met him in person, but he publishes books, and he is a professional empathy teacher on the academic side. So he's doing sociology research about.
My contention is that empathy should be part of the economic system. It is a reward system. You have to make it that is a function of that process. Then all these greediness and the platforms that suck the money to the top, that will go away. So we need to come about a new reward system based on empathy. That would be the compassion. And I think that is this AI is creating a big gap between the rich and poor, and
when you talk about economics, now you're talking about corporations, because that is what runs our world.
Yeah.
And I went to law school. I got a law degree, and
I didn't know that you have a law degree.
I have a law degree, but beneficial corporations is the new model. So that when you make a corporate charter, when you form a corporation, it's pretty common nowadays that in your corporate charter, you say, it's the triple bottom line. It's not just the shareholders, it's the shareholders and the customers and society at large, that's like the direction that things need to go.
So thank you so much, Danielle. Hang around for a few minutes after the podcast. I will talk with you a couple of minutes. I want to do thank you. It's truly an honor and privilege. You made my day. Let me just play a quick housekeeping. I want to do that. Just give me 1 minute. Just another thing coming up soon by Sophia Yan. She's
Hey everybody, this is Dr. Sophia Yan, and I'm happy to join MedBricks on April 23rd for a live broadcast where I will cover Menopause 101 and then some obesity tips as well. So what should you know about menopause? Number one, that estrogen has not been linked to increased breast cancer when used for hormone replacement therapy. And in fact, the estrogen-only arm of the Women's Health Initiative had decreased breast cancer and decreased deaths from breast cancer. What's my obesity tip for you? My obesity tip for you is eat the plate model. So envision a plate for every meal. Half of it has to be fruits and vegetables, a quarter of it protein, and a quarter of it carbohydrate. Usually we fill the whole thing with carbohydrate and throw things on top, but only as much protein do you eat can you eat carbohydrate. Join us April 23rd and come and learn more.
Thank you, Sophia, and good night, all of you.
We are retelling their stories through our patented designs that can be worn on scrubs, t-shirts, printed on conference bags, and endless other promotional materials. Daily Wear for Medicine is the first ever of its kind to create curiosity in medicine through visual art. We at MedBricks are celebrating unsung heroes of the past who made enormous contributions to the field of medicine. through our unique campaign called Daily Wear for Medicine. You can wear it, carry it, and give it.